listeners, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program, Spectra. As we're living right now in the autumn or the fall, we're expecting winter to come soon. And as you and I know, winter in the Northern Hemisphere is no easy situation because in the wintertime, there are a lot of extra requirements. We need more covers, more clothes, more spending on gas, on heating, on fossil fuel in general. And with the increase on the demand on fossil fuel and on gas, prices will soar up. And because gas is necessary for all forms of industry and transportation. That's why a lot of analysts say, although we're expecting a very, very cold summer where people will suffer from a frostbite, yet on the other hand, we're expecting a blazing hot winter in terms of economic effects. Especially that right after we were hit by the corona pandemic. And as we started to sort of think that things will be back to normal in the aftermath, yet there started a new war in Europe between Russia and the Ukraine. And other people are expecting another war in Asia between China and Taiwan. So what will be the long and short-term effects in the economic field of this war? To shed more light and to go deeper, I'm really delighted to be accompanied by the financial and business analyst, Fathi Abou-Farah. Mr. Fathi, hello and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Muhammad, and for receiving me and to be with you on this program. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have you. And just to start off, I would like you to comment on my intro here. Do you think I was exaggerating when I said it will be a blazing hot winter?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Muhammad. Yeah, it's after we have been excited and being optimistic that after reopening, after the lockdown of pandemic, we think that we are going to normal and business started to recover from being affected by the pandemic for the last 2 years. And now we're being shocked by what's happening in Ukraine, the war between Russia and Ukraine, and not only between Russia and Ukraine, it's between Russia and NATO, West Europe and the USA. So we are talking about a war that will be lasting for not in the short term. We're talking about a war that will have a great effect on the global economy and all the countries worldwide, not only in Europe. And I believe that the winter will be hot, as you mentioned, economically, and can affect on our consumer spending, inflation, a lot of material shortages, and delay in receiving what we need. Yeah, I think that what's been happening now in Ukraine is something that will take longer what we expect, and it will affect globally all the countries or all economies, even in Canada and all the far in the east or the west. I believe it will be everywhere. Yeah.
So, like you just said, although it seems to be a local war in Europe, but it's actually it's a global one because there are many parties that are in there. So on one side, we have Russia, which is the largest country in the world, and it's very rich in all forms of natural resources. And most important, of course, is fossil fuel and natural gas. But on the other hand, we have the second largest country in the world, Canada, third largest country in the world, United States of America. And these are extremely rich, equally rich, if not more, in natural resources. So Russian media usually brags and tries to show, like, there's a lot of propaganda, of course, like in any war in the world. Media plays a very, very fundamental role. So Gazprom, the Russian, giant, the Russian fuel giant, they created a song that, brings a lot of bad tidings to Europe and tells them that you are to expect an extremely, extremely cold winter, especially that you will not be supplied anymore by our gas. And we've seen, a lot of vandalism and a lot of destruction and sabotage, things that happen to the pipelines that would supply Europe with gas. So both old and new lines, we've seen people say, no, it was a result of an earthquake. No, it is some form of vandalism. No, it's sabotage. No, it's destruction. No, it's by the USA. No, it's by Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So will the fundamental effect be on Europe, basically, and other parts of the world will just have minor, damages? Is it fair to say that?
Yeah, I believe, as I mentioned, and you mentioned, it's something, okay, it's not between Russia and Ukraine. It's been affected, even in Russia and Ukraine, they have a lot of resources, oil, natural gas, grains, and all these things that is essential for our life. Canada, maybe people, and you are aware, as you mentioned, it's very rich. It's been producing and exporting oil, but at the same time, we, as everybody noticed, we've been affected by the oil prices and gasoline here in Canada. It was unbelievable. It was the increase over $2 per liter, which is something that's abnormal. It seems this is give you an indication that how this war can affect everybody, even the rich country like Canada. On the other hand, all the war is affecting on logistic, the cost of material, and insurance, and a lot of inputs, manufacturing inputs, is being needed by a lot of businesses in Canada. At the same time, Canada is exporting to USA and to Europe, and these exports for sure will be affected by this war. Europe is being suffering, and their economy is being badly affected by this war, and a lot of businesses will reduce their imports from Canada, and that's why we are talking about not only being Russia and Ukraine. It's been a lot of parties involved. A lot of resources is being been affected. The supply of this material being affected, and essential products we are talking about here, and that's why I'm sure Europe is more affected, but no doubt Canada and USA and even Far East, everybody's been affected by this war. In the Middle East as well, as we can notice that we rely a lot of the products of these products. So really, this is extraordinary war being affected by everybody.
So, like you correctly pointed out, that of course oil producers do not put the prices in a haphazard manner, in a random manner, or in an arbitrary manner.
Yeah.
They're very much bound by international agreements and organizations that so like the prices are put by the oil producers,
yes,
plural, rather than a single producer. So whether you like it or not does not matter how much you produce there. Again, it is a collective agreement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, both parties have boycotted one another. They've placed some kind of embargoes on one another as well, and so on and so forth. But again, Russians would always like to say that we're not affected, and they say that no, actually, this will be a crushing defeat for the West and for Europe per se. Is it really fair to say that only Europe will be affected? But how about the embargo and the boycotting that happened to Russia? Like if we do sort of a scale or like form of a balance sheet, which is like, your specialty here, like, of assets and liabilities of both parties, which one will have a surplus and which one will have a deficit, or will they break even?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we are talking about very strong parties. Russia is not alone. They have already an agreement with China and Iran, and even they have good relationship with some of the Gulf countries, which to maintain. So, and even Russia, before they enter this war, they will well prepared before that. And if we can notice and go back before this war, 2-3 weeks, a lot of agreements, supply agreements, signed by Russia with China and other rich countries to make sure that, well, at least because they are aware that when to enter this such war, it's not against Ukraine. If it's Ukraine alone, Russia can finish the war immediately. But what's happening behind Ukraine is Europe, North America, and a lot of countries. And that's why both parties, I believe, they are losing. In Europe, as we mentioned, the supply of oil and natural gas is very essential for them, for the industry, for the consumer spending. And, it's energy for us is very essential, especially in Europe. They rely on their industries and manufacturing producing entities. And on the other hand, also Russia been affected because being embargo and affecting on the SWIFT and with these financial tools, how they can make the transfers between financial institutions, how the Russian companies and big entities, how they will be affected by such embargo. For sure, Russia has been affected a lot, not in terms of soldiers or the war, even economically it was affected. At the same time, Europe and mainly Europe had been affected, especially UK or German and France.
So as a form of remedy for this, like, Russia, China, and others, they said, okay, we'll use our national currency instead of the US dollar.
Yes.
Or,
exactly. And remember, they have forced to pay the gas by ruble instead of dollar. And they have established their own SWIFT or their international transfer system. Russia, when they enter this war, it's a matter of it's a matter of existence, how they can be strong enough against NATO group.
And
it's similar what's been happening when Russia go to Cuba against USA in 1960 or 62. And it's a matter that this war, they know what's the implication, how they will be losing, how it will affect it negatively. But it's a matter of how they can be strong enough in front of Europe and USA, because if they agree that Ukraine to be part of the NATO, I believe that what they will lose may be more. That's what's been losing now. This is as per their calculations. And that's why they know that they will lose, and there will be a lot of things and embargo and a lot of will be force against them. But I believe both party, I cannot say who's more losing or who's been affected more. Both parties been affected widely, and not only these two parties, worldwide, globally, being affected by this war. And I believe what's been happening, it will not be last very soon. It will take more time, and you can see how it's been progressing during the last 2 weeks. Things that it seems that we will be having this war, and it affects even for the next year as well.
So there will be detrimental effects, of course, on the economy in both sides, but both sides can sort of withstand a lot of blows and stay on their feet. There is an increase in, depending on national currency for the Eastern Bloc. So this will increase the demand on the national currency, therefore increasing its value. On the other hand, there is an increase in interest rate in the West, and again, to keep the cycle of money going and so on. So, but both sides, they have something that can, hold them in their position for a while. They have a lot of provisions, if you like.
Yeah.
But how about third world countries? Now, we've seen, like all the world is seeing a form of inflation, but in the third world countries, it's an entirely different matter. And so where do these third world countries or developing countries fit into this equation?
Yeah, and you can see that it's been affected by, as you mentioned, Russia and Europe and USA, Canada. They are strong economy. But for the third for the poor countries or these, they are not strong enough. And the problem of these countries, even they haven't put a plan or a recovery plan for the food security. You can see that even for the essential food like grain, when they import from Ukraine, they've been affected by this war. They haven't think about, because this is an issue. Always these countries, they haven't think about the food security. How I can rely most of my essential food from certain countries and don't have the alternatives or things that I can rely on in case if there is something happen. What happened in Russia in the Ukraine war, it affect a lot of these poor countries, and it's affected badly, very badly, because as you mentioned, these Europe and the other rich countries, they have strong enough, a lot of provisions, a lot of resources, a lot of things that they can survive as much as they can. But for the poor countries, I'm sure being affected badly. And even in terms of food security, in terms of inflation, in terms of supply chain, a lot of inputs in their manufacturing, if they have been affected. Of course, at the end, it will affect on the consumer living expenses or spending.
Yeah, and we'll definitely touch upon this towards the very end of this episode again, because this is a very critical matter. But I would like you to kindly shed some light on, we talked about the losers, like everyone is a loser really in the war. But how about the winners? Like in every war, in every conflict, there is a third party that always gains. So we've seen some negotiations between Western countries and country like Qatar, for example, for natural gas. Venezuela, which is suffering from a lot of turmoil in its worst conditions ever. But Venezuela is one of the major producers of oil. So it's like, it's a match made in heaven, really, for Venezuela to finally find someone come and, to the rescue. So who are the winners in this conflict? Which countries and what kind of business sectors might benefit a lot from this war?
For sure, as you mentioned, now with the war and how Europe is being depending a lot on Russia natural gas, they are thinking to have alternatives. Of course, the alternatives will be costly. Already been a lot of negotiations with Venezuela or Qatar. Even the USA, they have started to export some oil and gas to Europe, but at the end they find it's very costly. But for sure, they will find a solution for that because they are aware now and they realize that we should find an alternative. Maybe things that will take some time, and I'm sure they have started already to implement some sort of action plan to find alternatives. Some countries, as you mentioned, Qatar or Venezuela, even Canada maybe, or USA, they are exporting, but they want to find alternative tools that to be for them more feasible. At the end, it's not a matter to supply, should be feasible and with reasonable fees or prices. Now, for sure, for any war, there is a lot of sectors will be winning out of this, which mainly, that when you have a war, weapons, and always they have the producers and everywhere, especially now, we can see that USA and some Western countries, they have provide weapons and play a lot of tools that can help.
Including Canada as well.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of,
and that's why this sector been for sure. After that, I'm sure construction and a lot of big companies will come to reconstruct what's been the damages happening in the war. A lot of supply chain for certain products that's needed for the soldiers or needed for such circumstances will be win out of this. For sure, there is a lot of people there is a demand because we are in unusual situations that there is a demand on certain things that people, they are very keen, these two parties keen to win and to do their best to win and to have, let's say, an advantage over the other party.
Okay, so away from like warlords or like black market and contractors and whatnot, like when the COVID pandemic hit the world, many analysts saw that actually it was like a time machine. It sort of boosted the advancement because things like online education and online trade were not really invented or like were innovations that just came in place because of COVID. No, it was in the plan. It was in the roadmap, really. But because of COVID, we use it earlier and we depended on it more than what was anticipated at the time. So do you think that we'll go back again to depend more and more on online business, trade, and education? Like, some people were starting to hope that maybe life will go back to normal like it was before 2020, but actually maybe we might, delve deeper into the crypts of online trade and online education, do you think? And maybe other kinds of automated services?
Yeah, because as a result of this war, we can see there is a lot of cost pressure on the businesses. The businesses now, especially with the inputs, the material, the shortage of material, how can that affect on their profitability? The shortage of because of the inflation, there is a tight on the labor shortage on labor, and how can find the skills people that they can cost. Now, the trend now, as you mentioned, as the pandemic has pushed the businesses and the people to go to online, and this been not invented but been accelerated because of the situation, and becomes maybe it's more that we should start to do it. The businesses now with this war and what's been happening and the global inflation and the expectation of to have a recession by the end of this year or the first quarter of next year, a lot of businesses now try to invest in infrastructure and to have online businesses, to have more efficient, to have things that not rely on people, that to invest more on automation, let's say, in their processes, to be more effective, more efficient, at the same time to be more feasible and to have not to lose from their margin. We heard about AI, artificial intelligence, things that been started a few years ago, but I can see from what I can notice in the worldwide, a lot of pressure to use the artificial intelligence in our businesses and our processes. And even we are the auditor, the financial consultant, we've been part of our processes. Now we're using artificial intelligence. You can imagine what's the trend, what's the business is going to do in the next. So we have a new normal life, or what they call it, a new trend, that's the mainly automation, mainly doing online. We can see the Amazon or Shopify or other platform, and a lot of coming. I can see a lot of platform is coming to have e-commerce in terms of because to accelerate and to have things online and more efficient. People, they have started to accept such behavior and such norm of their life. And I believe things will go to that trend to have more automation and more rely on to have infrastructure and work remotely.
But the problem with depending a lot on automation and artificial intelligence and depending less on humans and human labor, actually, so which means that a lot of people will be laid off, a lot of people will lose their jobs, and the ultimate goal, the real goal of any producer is not to produce, but to sell what they produce. So if I lay a lot of people off, then their ability to buy will be very, very minimal. Thus, this will lead to, recession and depression. So it's really a lose-lose situation. So is there another alternative instead of, depending on automation and laying people off, are there new sectors of work where those people who might get laid off should start working on? And especially today, if we have youngsters who are about to go and study something in university, should there be new sectors where they should?
This is what I want to focus on. As I mentioned, the trend is being taking, but it will not finish or will not happening entirely very soon. It will take phases. And that's why what recommend for all the new generations and even the people now, they should adapt and they should expect that a new trend or a new norm is coming, and they should start to think how to have new skills when they go to the university, how they should study, what's the things that is going to be in the future, And that's why it's a chain, and we can see there is a lot of people, they are behind the technology. Remember when we start the computer and the automation, and the people, they used to have only manual, and this the computer. People, they forced to study computer and to have to use the computer. It takes some time to now everybody can rely on this computer. I think what's been happening now, what's the changes is happening now, it will not been happening within 1 year or 2 years. It's a matter of a lot of long term, from maybe 3 to 5 years or more. And that's why people, they should start to think about to gain new skills and to study new subjects or new what you call it, academic curriculum, or something that will be used in the future. And people, they should take it seriously from now. Yes.
So we talked about, of course, that there will be mutual losses on both sides, the strong sides, and nobody can really tell, but it will be a really tough winter for everyone on both sides of the world, like Eastern and Western Bloc. We talked that there will be a fundamental change in the rules of the of business, and a lot of dependence on automation and remote learning and online trade, et cetera, et cetera. But earlier we talked about developing countries. Developing countries do not have these innovative abilities to think out of the box. They can't. And a lot of people are expecting today that this might lead to a lot of upheavals, civil strife, a lot of unrest really in these regimes and systems. But again, the rest of the world, developing countries, are not far away from this danger, because once you lose these countries, you lose these markets as well. So if people cannot buy anything in these developing markets, you cannot sell to the rest of the world. That's one thing. Another thing, again, is a lot of countries, developed countries, depend on developing countries for cheap labor. But if there is civil unrest, there will not be any industries and no discipline. Third, and last but never least, if the unrest would continue, you will have, floods and floods of refugees that will come to you. So do you think that because we have a de facto war, although it's not really a war in the field, with the exception of a very small piece of land at the Russian-Ukrainian border, but there's a lot of proxy war taking place. And because actually we've entered a new era or a new definition of war. 90% of the war now is in financial markets, on the internet, and on hacking devices and whatnot, and biological war.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people are not really aware or don't really feel that there is a war, because it's a very quiet, a very discreet, a very subtle war, but it hits deep and hard. So do you think that, World War I, we had the League of Nations, then World War II, we had the United Nations, different world orders. Do you think that we, out of all of this turmoil in the aftermath, we might have a more fair system?
I hope, Mohammed, that we can have a fair global system. And you mentioned now the new war is totally different what we are used to, using weapons and bombs and be destroyed now. The things now have been stronger than before. maybe we don't have, as you mentioned, by the electronic or the biology war, it's affecting. And we can see Corona and pandemic, how affect even very large corporation and even countries has been affected and be more deficit because of this pandemic, of this biological war. And as you mentioned, and that's why now to have fair global system, I believe every country, they should start to have economic strength or to strengthen their economic infrastructure. Now the power is with the country that they have very strong economic system. Of course, political is very important, but at the end, if you have a strong, you can control other countries, and we can see how you can control other countries and other resources. We have a lot of developing countries. They have a lot of resources, a lot of natural gas, mining, rivers, water, and a lot of things, and they are living in poverty. It's very bad situation because of two things. I believe that there is no proper education. If you have as a country, a developing country, you should focus on to have proper education for your people. Second, to have a strong economic base, which is based on small, medium businesses, and to have their flexibility and to grow, to import, manufacture, export, and to have this system. We don't have this. We don't have this. But for me, I don't think that we'll have fair system fair global system that can help these developing countries. And you can see even IMF or the World Bank, even when they try to help these developing countries, it's affecting them negatively more than they are positive out of to help.
International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, some people would see them as a fifth column, really, amongst the other countries, and that's working towards their demise. And the very ironic thing here, like the big irony, is that most of these developing countries are the greatest exporters of raw material.
Yeah.
And they sell them for very, very cheap prices, like really, but once these raw materials are processed or, like manufactured in the developed countries, these developed countries would sell it again to the countries of origin at much higher prices and exploit them more and more and more.
Yeah. And this is what's been happening. That's the strong or the rich countries, they are utilizing or they are being abusing
and exploiting
developing countries. And I believe these developing countries, they should change themselves and not expect somebody from outside to help them. They should start to educate, to rely on themselves, to have good infrastructure. And we have seen, like Malaysia, Singapore, we have a lot of examples that countries used to be very poor, and when they changed their system, now they are one of the biggest economy in the world. And that's why this is what we see. Don't rely from other countries or rich countries to help you. No, nobody will help you. You should help yourself by doing all this essential to have good economy.
Absolutely. Mr. Fatih Abfar, really, thank you very much for this great analysis. And it's a pleasure having you, and really looking forward to having you time and again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and have a nice day.
Thank you. So, dear viewers, if we were to recap here, in such, like dreadful situations like the one we're living in right now, it's really time to recall great sayings by great people. And here, what comes to mind is what Mohandas Gandhi said, which is the world has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. So if we'll just take our fair share and no more, there will be enough, there will be plenty for everyone actually. But because people are greedy, they want to take more than their fair share, so they deprive others from it. And like we said, we're entering a new system, a new kind of war that is more subtle, more discreet, more silent, cleaner even. But the wars take place in a science lab, in a computer lab. It's a war of science and or of economics, money. So whoever controls, these two will be the winner of the game. So it's really about time for everybody to realize that this world has no place for ignorance and has no place for dependence, has no place for corruption, has no place for laziness. It's going at an extremely unprecedented fast pace, and the rate of acceleration is expected to increase and increase and increase by time. And whoever doesn't catch up will be just left behind. It's about time again for even the strong countries to stop thinking of the zero-sum game, because at a zero-sum game, when my win is your loss and vice versa, really at the end, everybody's a loser. Because what good is it if my country wins the war at the expense of me losing one of my loved ones, or the expense of me losing my job? Will I be happy? No, actually. The memory of this victory will be a very bitter memory for me for the rest of my life. So it's in our own very best selfish interest, really, is to think of a win-win situation, because at war and conflict, nobody is a winner. Dear viewers, until we meet again, please take very good care. Thanks for watching.